Hello everyone and welcome to a brand new video. We're going to talk about the brand new patch that has just dropped today. It's live on servers, you can play it now. I'm going to run you through the patch, what it brings, what it changes, and how both civs and gameplay just in general is now changed. We're going to talk about how it affects us as players. The patch is called patch 9.2.628 and it is loaded with balance improvements for an awesome lineup of new and variant civilizations released within the Sultan's Ascent expansion last year. So it brings both AI improvements, map fixes, and a new seasonal event. So we will be seeing a new map pool, a new event called the Lunar Fair 2024. And you'll be able to gain a bunch of new portraits, new coat of arms, and a new dragon monument, Chinese dragon monument. Very cool. Personally think these are, always good additions to bring more cosmetic options. Well, let's go to the login reward here. We have a login reward. If you log in on February the 16th, you'll be able to get these new portrait. We'll see a new map pool rotation. A couple of maps will be going out of the map pool. I personally had a couple of maps that I wasn't very happy to play anymore. And now it is actually possible to play maps that are pretty much, balanced in their generation. So before we had to play, if you didn't want to play water, you'd have to play Rocky River or Golden Pit. Now that is not the case because Hidden Valley, Rocky River, Canal, and Golden Heights are all out. We are seeing 4 new maps: Forts, Boulder Bay, Mongolian Heights, and 4 Lakes. I'm personally very excited about Boulder Bay because the hybrid action on that map is so much fun. Forts is a new map as well, and so that will also bring in a new interesting map where we don't quite know what is going to be good on that map. It's a very, very strange one, and the generation seems to be pretty interesting as well. So the new map pool is officially Dry Arabia, Cliffside, Himeyama, Forts, Gorge, Boulder Bay, Mongolian Heights, Golden Pit, and 4 Lakes. Let's take a look at that. If we go into the ranked solo ladder, we'll be able to see them here. We have Boulder Bay and 4 Lakes and Mongolian Heights. I guess you can count Himeyama as well, but officially still no full water maps. We're still talking hybrid maps, and so the maps where water will be most important is probably going to be Boulder Bay and 4 Lakes, where Mongolian Heights and Himeyama is a little bit more situational. So now if you are not super happy about water, super fond of it, you can go ahead and veto 4 Lakes and Boulder Bay and still have another veto to I would personally use it on Golden Pit because of generation, but it's all up to you as a player what you feel like. Very cool new map pool. For the team ranked ladder, we are now seeing another map pool. Let's take a look at what they say here. Hidden Valley, Volcanic Island, Hideout, and Golden Heights are all out. We see 4 new maps: Forts, Canal, Hill, and Dale, and Waterholes. So the new team ranked map pool is now Canal, Cliffside, Dry Arabia, Forts, Golden Pit, Gorge, Hill and Dale, Himeyama, and Waterholes. These maps are, some of them are great, some of them I don't quite know yet. Waterholes and Forts are maps that we haven't gotten to play really. So really interesting to see what the ladder will look like. There's some updates to crashes and stuff. They're trying to hopefully bring that to an end. We've seen a lot of crashing lately, so hope that goes away. We have seen some AI updates. I'm not going to talk too much about this. It's great for new players that want to practice, or if you're practicing builds. Yeah, there's some general changes. We have a bug that will crash just when you start your multiplayer games. That seems to be fixed now. We'll see. We have the generated wall blockers that would have units, and it's not only villages, it was actually also units that would make them stuck. And so that was really annoying. If that's gone now, I am relieved. We are seeing an issue fixed here with the animation of the House of Wisdom wings. So they would be out of sync for the AU bits. For me, as a personally, as a more high level player, you depend a lot on when is the wing gonna pop, right? When are the units gonna come out? When is that Desert Raider come out? As for the opposite, when is the military wing units come out? And we depend on that animation, but for more average players, maybe that's not as relevant. Let's talk about maps. For maps, we are seeing some changes to African Waters, Hill and Dale, and Gorge. African Waters currently not in the map pool, but let's talk about Hill and Dale. So Hill and Dale has had a little bit of fixes here with the sacred site spawns. And also for Gorge, the sheep distribution, which many players have been very frustrated with, is now also changed. And it seems to also be happening on fords. And so now there's going to be less cases of 2 to 3 sheep spawning bunched together where a large amount of areas would remain arid. So maybe some of you remember, but I played in a qualifier for the EGC finals against GOA, it was, Give You Anxiety. And what happened in that game was I was doing a Dark Age aggression and I simply could not get that Dark Age aggression up to speed because I got 2 sheep in that entire match. And so we didn't meet scouts, and it was really unfortunate, but if that's fixed now, Gorge is going to be a lot more consistent in that regard, and that's nice. All right, let's jump to the balance and bug fixes. This is the big one. We're going to see a bit of a siege rework. It's going to change a lot of things. Now, I personally haven't tried it out, and so we'll see how it's going to fully affect gameplay. But what we can tell based on these notes is now that Springlets have their attack speed improved from 4 to 3 seconds. They now fire faster, but their bonus damage has been reduced. So instead of plus 70, it's now plus 60, which would indicate that it's now going to be tougher for Springlets to destroy siege. But Springlets will now also be more impactful when they fight. They'll have a longer time on the battlefield because they do less damage supposedly to each other as well. So I guess they're going to take 1 hit more. I might be wrong, but I think that's how it works. Culverins have their attack speed improved from 4.38 to 3.25. And so it's the same as with the Springlets. They are now attacking faster. And their bonus damage to siege and naval has been reduced from 100 to 60. So Culverins will be more effective late game when you're shooting out your hand cannons, your opponent's hand cannons. When there's no siege left, they have more usage. And that's great, I think, because a lot of times if you win this siege stuff and you have 5-6 Springlets, what are you going to do with them, right? Your opponent's now going to maybe utilize the weakness that you now have because you have so much pop space that is wasted. So now Culverins and Springlets will be more effective. As for Mangonels, ranged armor is increased from 20 to 30. Also going to have some synergy here with the changes. So Mangonels will probably take another hit. Nested Bees, the same thing. Same for Traction Trebuchets, Counterweights. And Bombards now have their ranged armor increased from 30 to 35. And then another thing, this is huge, because we're going to talk about Rams after. Villager Torch bonus now versus Siege has been removed. What does this mean? It means that when you are doing your ram push, the villagers that jump out of the TC will now no longer do as much damage. And that is huge. It means that ram pushes in Feudal Age are now going to be a little bit better, together with the change to the rams, so that they now cost 200 wood, as you can see here, and that their health has now been reduced. We are going to see Feudal play with ram pushes be a lot more economic, I guess. It's going to be something that you aren't going to take as big of a hit from going onto multiple rams. So if you make 3 rams, it's 600 wood instead of the 750. The reduction in health is probably going to make just in general units instead of villagers perform better against them. And so now rams are going to be more fragile, but not to villagers. They take an additional 20% bonus damage from melee attacks, so your spearmen can actually work against them. And then there's another thing here with the attack move, where melee units now target rams automatically. It's going to be interesting to see how units are going to prioritize that. But I guess that rams in your army, when you're fighting against someone, is going to have some positive effect because it's going to disperse the damage. The next change is Tithe Barns. This is an H4 technology. Tithe Barns is a technology that you will always go for if you have relics. This is now changed, so they are still going to give the same amount of resources. Instead of 30 food and 30 wood and 30 stone, it's now 40 food, 40 wood, and 10 stone. So 20 of the stone has been converted into 10 wood and 10 food. This is great because we will be seeing less defensive gameplay, more offensive gameplay. Now you can make more units with your Tithe Barns. So they do generate a lot of resources, still the same amount, but with less focus on getting free keeps or free emplacements. Yeah, that's going to be a big one. The Mongols' improved tithe barns has been changed to 60 food, 60 wood, 15 stone. Very cool. As for Imperial Age economy upgrades, this is huge. And I will really say this because we're talking about 2 upgrades that pretty much just didn't matter on normal maps. So when you have Crosscut Saw and your Cupellation, and we can take a look at what upgrades those are for the people that don't know. When you are going for your eco upgrades, you always go for the tier 1. You go for your tier 2 upgrade later on in the game. But what happened was when you went for your H4 tier 3 eco upgrades, so for your wood and your mining upgrade, these would never pay off because they were too expensive and they gave pretty much no increase in gold. By the time Cupellation started to pay off, you had no gold left on the map anyways. So Cupellation and Crosscut Saw has now been changed. So now Crosscut Saw, what it does is it increases the village's gathering rate for wood by 15%. So the same as before, but now it also increases gather capacity by 5. So now these long wood lines without mining camps will be, have less of an impact with this extra wheelbarrow type buff. Cupellation is the same thing. Gold gatherers drop off 15% more resources. Great. Overall, I think these changes are much better, and we are going to see these upgrades be more relevant. There's some bug fixes. So there would be something about villagers gather logic when it comes to nearest available live sheep instead of traveling far distances for a carcass. So if you have sheep and deer together on a mill, now they will actually go for the sheep because it makes more sense when it comes to gather distance. The docks are now no longer selected when using select all military buildings hotkeys. This is great for playing hybrid. I think a lot of the frustration with playing water is, at least for me, because I use to select all military buildings, I cannot really set these shared rally points for my buildings. Now I can. So it's going to be a lot easier for me to have my dock and my military. Horse archer units no longer favor the front of formations. Great again. Don't really need to say much about that. And then you have conversion and this word. No longer target unit who are blessed with Jeanne d'Arc's Strength of Heaven. So that's the champion unit, I believe it is. And then you have hand cannons from archer rangers will now produce X5 when using the shift modifier to produce them. Few boxes, few changes here. Landmark Town Center's garrison arrow range corrected from 8 to 6 tiles. This one is rough. Landmark Town Centers, the garrison arrow, so that is villages that jump into the main TC, have now their arrow range reduced down to 6 tiles. What this does is if you have, for example, a mill, you're playing as Chinese, sometimes you do, against the English longbows, these villagers gathering under the TC actually are not safe anymore. They cannot jump into the TC and then kill the longbows that come within range. Now your town centers, all the villagers will shoot at a shorter distance. You will still have your main arrow from your TC, the standard attack, be 8 tiles, but the 6 tiles reduction is insane when it comes to aggression. So again, this builds upon the ram change and the villager change. Feudal aggression will be so much better now because defensive playstyles are just at a big nerf. Let's talk a little bit about the civilization-specific changes. So for the opposite, we now see a little bit of a nerf. The Golden Age Tier 3, they've corrected it so that instead of a 30% flat gather rate for all your villagers, you now only get 20%. This is pretty big for your late game economy, but honestly, still good. I do think it was too strong. Golden Ages in general are very strong. So this is probably a good nerf, though Abbasid doesn't seem to get the most play anyways, so we'll see. For AU-bits, we are seeing a nerf to the advancement wing, which is this one. So the culture wing advancement, where you would go your fast castle or your fast imperial, usually your fast castle, that style of play is now nerfed, I guess. It takes a longer time, so instead of 40% less time, it's 20%. And it also costs a little bit more. So the advancement culture wing is overall at a pretty big nerf here, we will see more Ubid play in the Feudal Age, I assume. But yeah, we'll see. The Dervish also no longer heals units in garrison. That's nice. And yeah, transport ships loaded with Adabex will now probably reduce their maximum count. Byzantines. So they say here in the developer note that there are some things about the Byzantines that needs to be changed. Not necessarily nerfed, but changed. Because the Byzantines have these some OP elements, and then there's some things about their tempo in general that just never builds up. So what we will see here now is that together with the ram change, the Chirosyphons, their fire rams, are now reduced cost as well, reduced health, but they cost 300 resources instead of the, I think it was 400 or something. This is great, but it's also, you know, a reflection of the overall ram change. So they're still great. They just perform a little bit less effectively, but they're also less, you know, they cost fewer resources. Then we have the cisterns. So the cisterns, for me, I've always had problems with the cisterns because they take so long to really start to pay off. Now cisterns are going to be very effective because the first cistern, instead of giving only 5% increase, your first water level will be 10% now, and then it increases by 4% every time, which means instead of 5, 10, 15, 20, and 25 is now 10, 14, 18, 22, and 26%. So it goes up to a higher number and starts off higher. This is great for cisterns because they were just in general so slow to really, you know, actually do something that if you were to go for second TCs or decide to go for a second TC, you know, that cistern that you went for early wasn't really necessary anyways. So the stone cost cap from the cisterns are now 250. The build time is shorter, so we will see a faster feudal age. We'll see more focus on the one cistern play because the second cistern has less of an impact. So the cistern of the first hill landmarks also had a change. The starting flask has been increased to 3 instead of 1. And your flask maximum is increased from 10 to 20. So this landmark is probably going to be viable again. We'll see some play with that fast castling, and just in general, maybe this is an indirect buff to the cataphracts that are just that were useless. Maybe now they'll be better with this landmark. We'll see. We'll see. I cannot say yet. They also decreased the amount of health restored. It was overall giving so much HP that it didn't really matter. And the healing duration is shorter, but fewer points of health, I guess. The flask also spawned 15 seconds faster, and the cooldown is now 20 instead of 45. The Grand Vinery is now a mill and a monastery, and includes food and economy technologies. Let's take a look at that. This is great, because what was really the problem with the Grand Vinery was that you were not going to get a mill. So if you wanted to go for wheelbarrow, then that was just not going to happen. But now it's both a monastery and a mill. So you can train your monks, you can get your herbal medicine, tithe barns, whatever, and your tier 1 food upgrades, pro scouts, wheelbarrow, and survival techniques. This is really, really good. And makes Grand Vinery probably just as good as Hippodrome. Hippodrome is a good landmark, but Grand Vinery is now really good both for fast castling and playing longer feudals. They've also made a change to the Limitane shield wall, which is their ability that reduces incoming damage, and this makes Limitane a little bit weaker, but overall not that big of a change in my opinion. We'll see how big of a deal it is. I don't think it is a big deal, going from 50% to 40% reduction in ranged damage. They've overall changed the Dialecticus research speeds. So before you were able to get an insane amount of research speeds on Imperial upgrade, Castle Age upgrades, now that is down to 150% max instead of 250. So you start off with 30, 60, 90, 120, 150 instead of the 50, 100, 150, 200, and 250. Insane, you know, rates. So this is better, I think, because cisterns are now going to be a lot more important. The Golden Horn Tower landmark, we had a issue where Keshiks were spawning in batches of 3, but all the other contract units from the Feudal Age were spawning at their standard batches, I guess. So you would have your 5 longbows, but you get 3 Keshiks instead of 2 from the Golden Horn Tower. So the Golden Horn Tower has had a fix here. It is now, you know, the correct value. No more spamming Keshiks, I guess. The reduced training time is now 60 instead of 50, so also spawns units a bit faster. The Streltsy olive oil costs have been increased from 540 to 720. The Varangian guards are no longer selected with mercenary ghulams. That's great because, you know, your ghulams are there to build mangonels, to build your siege. Your Varangian guards are there to slaughter, I guess. Ghulams are not really a man-at-arm unit when you include it in your composition because you already have access to man-at-arms. The Hippodrome is now still gonna grant supply points, just not from wolves. And we're gonna see Acrotoid defense, so that it now changes to a spear that deals bonus damage as well. So 1, 2, 3, and 5. Really important to know, I guess, because your villagers are actually really good at defending themselves from raids. But most people don't know this. When you're late game and you see these horseman raids come into your olive groves, well, if you have 20 villagers that you can just pull there, activate the Acrotoid defenses and go ham. We have an issue here where System did not cost any wood to repair. Good to know, I guess. Past me would be very happy to know that. And yeah, let's go into Chinese. So Chinese Imperial Academy now it produces Imperial officials. It still did that before, but now with a 30% discount. So instead of just costing 150, that cost is now reduced with 30%. That is really, really good for the early game Chinese. And means that you can get your Imperial official count up to 4 a lot quicker. Because usually you would start off with 1, you'd go into a second one, maybe you're going second TC, but you want to get your 3rd and 4th one as well so you can supervise. And now that's, going to be a lot faster. The dock decrease work rate is now, the work rate is now decreased to 10% instead of 20%. This is also for the Shu-Shi variant civilization. We'll talk more about that later. The improved supervisability is now going to explain clearly that which buildings can be targeted, so that's good. And Chinese houses and villages would now face an issue where Chinese houses and villages would display a tax UI despite not generating any tax. So, nice change. Just quality of life. For the Delhi, we see a change to the manuscript trade. It says that scholars that are already garrisoned in docks will be properly counted as active scholars. This fixes an issue where the active scholar count could go negative, breaking Sultanate's research times. Great. Yeah, so docks when destroyed will decrease the scholar count correctly if manuscript trade is researched and a scholar is garrisoned. So the manuscript trade is the one from the dock here. It's the first one, dark age one. You always get this one pretty quickly, because it does the same as improved production does from your mask. It provides a 30% faster production speed, and that's great. So now you have that upgrade, actually works now, together with your mask. For the English, we are now seeing Vanguard Rangers being selected with all ranged infantry, so no changes to English this time. The French trade ships now correctly generate 20% more resources instead of 33% more. Fixed an issue where the Chamber of Commerce would skip one free trade if 2 or more economy technologies are researched in Dark Age. Also nice, makes Chamber of Commerce, the COC build, more viable. As for HRE, we are seeing an issue where Holy Inspiration would be cast on enemy naval units, breaking its animation. That's a weird change, but I guess that's fixed. If you are a Japanese enjoyer, you might want to listen now, because we are seeing a massive change to the choice of faith. We'll see that the Shinto Shrine and the Buddhist Temple will have new upgrades, and they will also have new styles that they can be incorporated into. The Shinto Shrine and Buddhist Temple now each contain 3 new technologies which replace herbal medicine, piety, and tithe barns. So the Japanese no longer have tithe barns. What do they have instead? Well, let's take a look at it. The Shinto Shrine has an upgrade called Shinto Rituals. So this basically gives your Shinto priest healing, but also an additional 40% health, your piety, and movement speed for only 300 gold. This is a really, really strong upgrade now. So you can actually start to do priests that are fast, that can heal units in the field. As for Imperial Age, we no longer have access to tithe barns, but instead we can get 2 Yudishiros for 400 gold. Great. We also have another one called Gaion Festival, and this increases the line of sight of all buildings by +2 tiles. And so every 3 minutes, all economic units will also heal for 100% of their health over 3 seconds. If you have damaged traders, villagers, these will now all heal up, and all your buildings can now see a lot more, which means if you are dealing with raids and that's tough for you, that won't be a problem anymore. You'll see them coming, and your villagers that are damaged, they will now heal up again. As for the Buddhist temple, we now have these upgrades. Zen. So this is your now tier 3 tithe barn. So in Castlade, you get your own type of tithe barns. What it does is it makes it so that Buddhist monks generate 25 gold every 60 seconds. So now you have relics in the form of monks. Really strange, but you're going to get a lot of gold if you run mass Buddhist monks. And so what I guess we will see now, without spoiling too much, is Buddhist temples build where people are running a lot of ranged. They're buffing up their range with their Buddhist monks and getting a lot of gold on top of it with their monks through the Zen Buddhist technology. We have something called Nechan, which is an upgrade to the conversion, the Buddhist conversion. So now it's called Nechan conversion, which has a 25% shorter cooldown, and it also improves nearby ally units' movement speed by 25% when cast. You can probably think to yourself how that's going to affect gameplay. It's really interesting. Only 350 gold. The last one is called 5 Mounted Ministries, and the 5 Mounted Ministries Buddhist technology that costs 750 gold makes it so that your Buddhist temples, the buildings, will now cast Suhai's Sutra. And that means that they are going to, every 6 seconds, debuff enemy units. This is great. When you're fighting out on the map, it's going to be a lot more advantageous for you to just fight out there, because now you have buildings doing the debuffing, not units. You're saving up a pop space, and you can now use these buildings. 4 to 5 of them, I think it is. And yeah, we're gonna see Buddhist monk builds pretty soon. Let's go back to the notes. Buddhist temple, Buddhist Shinto shrine, and Buddhist monks. All changes. We have some changes to the town center rocket range, decreased to 8 tiles instead of 9, and we have the hand cannoneers renamed to hand cannon Ashigaru, and the Koka township will no longer instantly spawn a shinobi, but instead queued in a production for free when the landmark completes construction. This is a change for water. So if you're playing water, you usually play with the shinobis to disrupt enemy docks. That was very strong. That's been changed. So now it's slower. The gunsmith has an update. Buddhist monks will no longer leave their stand ground state when they're casting Sohai Sutra, the same ability that the buildings now have. And yeah, so let's see. Copper plating technology would display 2% instead of +2 fire and ranged armor. This was a pretty important one, but people figured it out pretty early. And yeah, some few issues have been changed with formations. You can check these out yourself. I will post the patch notes down below. As for Jeanne d'Arc, we are now going to see a massive change to her. And it's probably not the change that most people saw coming, but I think it's a good change. I think it's overall going to be a little bit more interesting now to play against her in Feudal Age aggression, because she'll scale differently. So she has an upgrade now in the blacksmith that increases her armor and her health, I think it was. Let's take a look at it. The Jeanne d'Arc civilization has companion equipment that would before only buff the companions. Now it's also going to increase health and damage for Jeanne d'Arc by 25% and gain 1 armor. This is a 500 resource cost upgrade, so really, really expensive. You can think of it as sacrificing 2 knights. And that's a lot. That's a lot early on. So if people go for this early, they might lose a lot of tempo. But for later on, this is going to be great. Because what happens with Jeanne d'Arc now is she will get an overall nerf. And then the way she scales is now through this upgrade. So you'll see tier 2 Archer Jeanne. She will now move faster but have less health. And the tier 3 Holy Wrath. So that's when the Holy Wrath, a Landsknecht type of strike that people have been really frustrated with. That one has been reduced now in the damage by 5, and that's a lot. Tier 3 melee health has been reduced as well, and so the upgrade that we were talking about before is going to now make up for that, but it comes later on, I guess you could say. So taking fights against Feudal Age Jeanne d'Arc is going to be a lot more fun, because you'll force Jeanne to not go for that upgrade. She has to make units. If she doesn't make units, you win. So now you can actually play Feudal against her. Supposedly. We'll see. Also some changes to tier 4. Again, just reduction in general to go with the upgrade. There's the upgrade we're talking about. Before it would cost 175, now it's 500. It's moved from the keep to the blacksmith. And yeah. We have Jeanne d'Arc will no longer lose ability charge progress when she is killed. So if you're trying to get your buildings reduced in their production cost, that is now no longer going to be reset. That's great. Actually annoying when you were trying to do that and you lost her early. You lost a lot of tempo. And so it's like either you dominate or you lost her and it's like, damn, this is going to be a rough game. Yeah, and let's see. Nothing major here. All right. Mongols. The Mongols have a quick change. Improved wheelbarrow. Maximum number of resources carried has been increased from 7 to 9. So that's your stone upgraded wheelbarrow. Order of the Dragon, seeing a massive change as well. Well, it might not seem a lot. It is on paper quite a lot. The Dragon Villagers gather rate bonus will be increased from 25% to 28%, making your villagers that are fewer in number a lot more effective. The Gilded Landsknechts has 10 extra health per age. So instead of 170, they get 180. And instead of 200 in Imperial, it's now 210. Then we have the special upgrade called Botkin Bolts, which is the one from the Minevac Palace. Here it is, the Imperial one. 700 resources, now deals plus 20 damage against siege units. Massive one. You think about the reduction overall in ranged armor for Sprinkles. This is now going to make late game OOTD insane. So crossbows, even more strong than they were before. Instead of 10 plus damage, the upgrade gives them plus 20. They fixed the bug with Elsbach, and something about Dragonfire upgrade, no longer deal damage to nearby allied buildings. That's nice. Alright. Ottomans. The Sultanhani Trade Network is now going to give you another free trader. Instead of 2, you get 3. So this is a landmark we never see in play. And if you don't know which one it is, it's not the food one. It is the trade one. So instead of giving you 2 traders, it now gives you 3. It also increased the garrison slots up to 10. So we'll see probably some interesting styles with that. And it also reduced the income of each trader to 24 instead of 28. Then they fixed an issue with the Elite Sipahi upgrade, which would take longer. Now it matches the other Imperial upgrades. Rus. Most of you have felt the late game Rus Ram spam. That has now been nerfed a little bit. So the Wandering Town bonus, which is the one that you get from your High Armory, this one, is now not going to give you plus 50% on Rams. It's now going to give you plus 25. They still heal, but they do less damage. That's great, because that was a really, really strong ability. And so Rams have been nerfed. They have less health, and now they're easy to kill. A little bit easier to spam as well, but Rus is not going to gain much from that. Shushi's Legacy. This is the one that everyone is talking about, because Shushi's Legacy is not going to get the nerf that everyone thinks they're going to get. Meditation Gardens will be nerfed, and the Song Dynasty will be nerfed. So Song Dynasty will still give you a large reduction in cost. So the wood will still be reduced, just now with 30% instead of 40. And it doesn't affect your upgrade buildings, such as university and blacksmiths. Now it only affects lumber camps, mill mining camps, granaries, farms, town centers, houses, villages, and markets. You can still do your 2DC 5 whatever minutes build. You can still, build your farms and granaries with what are they called? The Jingnan Tower. So you go into Song Dynasty and you get your reduction there, and then you start doing farms. That's still possible. And so that whole style of play is still viable. It's just not as OP. The Meditation Garden range have been reduced to 8 tiles, and all the resources that it can gather now grant less. So instead of 8 food per berry, it's now 6. Instead of 30 stone, it's now 25. Instead of 30 gold, it's now 25. This is, great change, I would say. Probably just going to take some of that over-tuning away. If it needs more, we'll see. but I think Shushi is going to be a little bit easier to deal with. Without it being completely unplayable, of course. You can still play Shushi if you like to. Shushi's library, Cloud Terror, area of effect reduced by 0.125 tiles, and they increase the damage fall off. The dog work rate is now 10% as the Chinese, and you can now no longer queue up multiple technologies in Shushi's library. So what people would do before is that they would try to multi-click all of the upgrades, and they would get like 3 upgrades instead of 2, where there's a cap on 2. This has now been fixed as well. The Tang Dynasty no longer reduces the wonder cost, and they've corrected some issues with Yuan Raiders. Discount and Shaolin Monks can now also deposit relics reliably. So before, if you'd been in a fight with the Shaolin Monks, sometimes they would not be able to drop off their relics. You'd have to delete that monk, build a new one, which are quite expensive, and then get the relic. The 10,000 bolt upgrade also now reflects the 40% reduced, 40% effective crossbow damage that the additional bolt grants. So that's great. Anyways, that's pretty much it. If you have any questions about this patch, what changes will be, if you want to talk about it, comment down in the comment section below. I'll be there and answer as many as I can. And yeah, if you're interested in coaching, there will be a slide about that in a second. And last but not least, check out the YouTube channel, check out the Twitch channel, and enjoy the new patch.